Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching. Today I'm going to be reviewing the new Anastasia Fall Romance palette, and I have a lot of thoughts on this one, so you're definitely going to want to stay tuned. I'm going to be doing 3 looks, also comparison swatches to other palettes in my collection, and I'm also going to be answering the #1 question I've been getting about this palette that you're all wondering, and that is, can you use this if you have a lighter skin tone? Because it does look like it goes very deep and smoky. So we're going to be getting into all of that. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jen. I do tons of makeup reviews, all of which are unsponsored. So if that sounds good to you, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and let's go ahead and jump right in and get started. All right, so first up, let's just take a close look at the palette, then we'll get into the 3 looks that I'm gonna do. So first up, I think the packaging is such a nostalgic vibe. It really reminds me of their older palettes a little bit, mainly because it has that fuzzy texture like the Modern Renaissance palette, the Subculture palette, and also Soft Glam. So I love that they're kind of going back to their roots with this one. Inside, you do have the larger pans like they have in their newer palettes, so on the inside it doesn't really look like the older ones. You're also getting 12 shades in here as opposed to the 14 that you used to get in some of their older palettes. And to be honest with you guys, I like this palette a lot more in real life than I did when I saw the promo photos. In some of the photos that I saw, the gold shades kind of all looked the same. They looked like there were 2 of the same greens. And in person, at least, the gold shimmer shades are actually very different from each other. The 2 greens are kind of similar. One's a little bit deeper than the other, which you'll see in the swatches, but there definitely aren't as many repeat shades as I thought there were going to be. And I just love the rich, smoky, grungy vibes. I love the earthy tones mixed with the jewel tones. It's just a really, really beautiful color combination. And they also give you 3 duochrome shades in here. You have Moonlight, which is that light lavender with a sparkling pink opal shift. You also have the shade Divine, which has more of a satiny finish, and this one is that chrome vivid purple with a sparkling pink pearl shift. And then you have Crown, which is a duochrome gold with a sparkling blue-green shift. So I'm personally a huge fan of duochromes. I love that they just add a little bit of like depth and dimension to your look. They don't look quite as flat every time you turn your head. They look a little bit different. So I'm personally very excited that they included those. So when I had posted the promo photos of this on my community tab, a lot of you had said that it looks a little bit too dark, too smoky, especially for those of us who have fair to light skin tones. And I would say that's definitely valid. I had the same thought. You know, when you look at this palette, I see it looking absolutely gorgeous on medium to deeper skin tones, but it's not to say that lighter skin tones can't use this palette. And we're going to figure that out as I do the 3 looks. I have not tried this palette yet, so you're going to kind of try it along with me and see how it works out for somebody with my complexion. But just looking up close at the palette, it looks like the only shade that I can use as a transition or crease color is this one right here, Leather, and possibly this one, Ember, but I'm not sure. I'd probably have to shear this one out quite a bit, but I think it probably could be done. The rest of the matte shades down here just look very deep. They're kind of the colors that I would normally put in my outer corner to deepen things up or even use as liners. I think all of the shimmer shades in the top row, which is most of them, you have Smoke, which is this beautiful taupe, Moonlight, which is a gorgeous lavender topper. Then you have Fireside, which is a coppery shimmer shade. Divine is a little bit on the deeper side. This is that duochrome. It almost comes out like a magenta, and it's a satiny finish, so it doesn't have a lot of sparkle or shimmer to it, but I plan to actually layer this one underneath Fireside. I think those would pair together really well. And then we have Crown, which is this green gold duochrome. I think any of these would work beautifully for me as a lid color. The only shimmer shade that I probably wouldn't wear all over my lid is this one down here, Moonlight, because it is a really deep dark shade, but I'd probably just use that one in the outer corner just to deepen things up a little bit. So I do think, looking at the palette in person now, it is more wearable than I was expecting. I just think I'm gonna have to be okay with using leather in my crease for pretty much every look. So let's go ahead and just get into the 3 looks, and that way we'll see kind of how it performs and how the colors all work together, and then I'll show you guys some comparison swatches. For the first look, I want to just do something very basic and neutral, and then I'll do something more colorful on the other eye. So first, I'm gonna dip into that leather shade right here, and I'm just gonna use my fluffy crease brush from BK Beauty. It's the 201. And I'm just gonna start this right in the crease. It did have a little bit of fallout when I first picked up this shade. There was a lot of powder just sitting in the pan, and I just made sure to tap off my brush so that it didn't rain down all over my face. So, I mean, so far it's blending effortlessly. I did prep my eyes with the MAC Painterly Paint Pot, and then I just dusted some translucent powder over it to set it. And I'm just gonna blend this one up toward the brow bone. It's really blending out so easily. Next, I'm gonna deepen the outer corner with this shade Ember right here. And I'm applying this one with the Sigma E27 brush. I love this brush. It's really small. It just fits into this outer corner area of my eye really well. Then I'm just gonna blend this out with the Sigma E24. Again, the shadow is so soft, it just blends like a dream. There's no patchiness at all. And I'm just blending this one toward the center of my lid. Next, I'm just gonna pop a little bit of my NYX glitter primer just right on my lid. I don't recommend using this anywhere but your lid and only shimmer shades on top of it. Mattes are never gonna blend because it's really, really sticky. So I'm gonna use this taupey shade right here. And this is called Smoke. So I'm just gonna apply this right to the lid. All right, so I actually switched to using my finger. I just think it gives a little bit more intensity. And then I'm just gonna take that shade Ember that I used in the outer corner, that kind of deeper brown, and I'm just gonna line the outer edge of my lower lash line with it and just connect the two together. And I should also mention that I am a makeup enthusiast, but not a makeup artist. So apologies if my looks don't come out completely perfect. All right, and then I'm just going to pop some mascara on. This is the Hourglass Unlocked Instant Extensions. This is a tubing mascara, and I really, really love it. All right, so here is look number one. I think this really shows that you can just easily get a very simple, basic, everyday neutral look with this palette. So it definitely has that going for it. I think everything just applied so beautifully. If you wanted to change this up, you could use the same crease color and outer corner shade, but instead of the taupey shade on the lid, you could switch it with the Fireside shade right here, this copper, and it would still give you an equally as beautiful neutral look, but it would just be a little bit warmer and kind of more fall vibes than the one that I just did here. So that's just one other thing you could do. All right, then for the other eye, I'm gonna do something just slightly more colorful. So again, I'm gonna take that shade Leather and just put that right into my crease. Next, I wanted to use the shade Divine right here, which is that beautiful magenta shade. And I'm just gonna pat this one all over the lid with my finger. This one has a satin finish as opposed to the more metallic finishes of the other shimmery shades. So I'm just gonna pat this all over, and taking my Sigma E24, I'm just gonna blend out the edge of that really quick. Then to just add a little bit of depth to the outer corner, I'm gonna pick up this shade Crimson right here. And for this one, I'm using the Sigma E27 brush again. I'm just gonna pat this on and just blend it into that Divine shade a little bit. Honestly, these shadows have all been so easy to work with. I haven't had any issues so far. Everything is blending like silk. I haven't had any patchiness issues at all. It's just beautiful. Next, I wanna pick up this gorgeous lavender shade Moonlight, and I'm just gonna wet that with a little bit of setting spray because I just think it'll help it pop a little more. And I'm gonna pat that right on the lid on top of that Divine shade, and I think it's really gonna be a beautiful combination. Yeah, look at how that just transforms. This Moonlight shade is really sheer, it's a topper, so you can really still see that Divine color through it, but it almost kind of creates a new color at the same time. It is so, so pretty. And the one thing that I'll say about this Moonlight shade is it is a little bit hard to pick up from the pan, so it really does need a little bit of setting spray. I'm using the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush setting spray, but anything will work. You really just have to get it wet to get it to lay down a little bit more color, because on its own, it's very sheer and it's a little bit, like I said, difficult to pick up in the pan. It's kind of hard pressed. So that's really the only shade that I've had any kind of issue with so far. But again, you still can make it work just wetting it with a little bit of setting spray. So it's not really a big deal. I'm just gonna quickly blend this crease color a little bit. I feel like I just need to kind of soften the edge. And then I'm just gonna apply a little mascara. All right, so here's the look on this side. It's a little bit more colorful. I think it came out super pretty. Again, not a makeup artist, but hopefully this just kind of will help inspire you guys a little bit and show how you can combine certain colors. So we have this colorful look here, and then the more neutral look over on this side. All right, I'm just gonna take this off. We're gonna do one final look, and then we'll take a look at some other palettes that might be similar. All right, again, I am going in first with the shade Leather. And again, just applying this right to the crease and blending up toward my brow bone. Next, I'm going to use the shade Thorns. This is the lighter of the two greens. And I'm taking this on the Sigma E27, and I'm just going to pat this right in the outer corner. This is actually a beautiful green. It has a little bit more of a grayish undertone, which I find is pretty rare when it comes to greens. Usually I feel like they have a little bit more blue in them, or they're like a forest green. This one's almost like a cement color with just a little hint of green to it. It's actually gorgeous. I feel like it's very 90s grunge. And once again, this color is performing really nicely. I don't have any patchiness going on. I didn't feel like some of these matte shades really swatched the best, but they're all applying with ease, which is really great. I'm also just going to take a little bit of the Thorns color and just run it under the outer corner of my lower lash line just to connect to the top shade. All right, again, I'm just going to put a little bit of glitter primer on the inner corner of my eye, just on the lid and toward the middle. Next, I'll be applying Crown, which is this absolutely stunning duochrome. And I'm just gonna apply that right to the center of my lid and kind of blend toward the inner corner. Oh my gosh, this might be my favorite color of the palette. Kind of why I saved it for last. And because it's a gold with a green flip, it just pairs really nicely with the green. But I feel like you could also use this color with any of the neutral browns in the palette as well. I also think as an alternative to this color, you could easily use the shade Smoke, which I used for the first look. I think that would also pair so well with the green right there. In fact, this trio of Smoke, Leather, and Thorn would just be a beautiful combination as well. All right, just gonna apply mascara. Okay, so here is look number 3. I love this look too. Honestly, I've been having a lot of fun playing with this palette, much more than I was expecting. And while it is a deep, dark, and smoky palette, at the same time, I was able to get 3 very different looks out of it. And I find that you could easily substitute in different shimmer shades, like I mentioned as we were going along, and create even more looks that are just as easy and just as wearable on a fair to light skin tone. I'm just really enjoying the moody, grungy vibe of this palette, but I just feel like this is so perfect for this time of year. So I will get into some more of my final thoughts, but why don't we go ahead first and take a look at some comparisons to other palettes in my collection. Okay, so honestly, the first palette I thought of when I saw Fall Romance was the Gather Round Sisters or Hocus Pocus palette from Colourpop, the original one. They both have the same greens, pinks, reds, neutrals. They honestly look so similar, and while some of the shades match up and some of them don't, I definitely think it has the same vibes going on. So if you already own the Hocus Pocus palette, this might be your sign to just dig it out and play with that again rather than spending money on the ABH. Another palette I thought of was the Viseart Dark Edit palette. This one also has major fall vibes. It has some of the same jewel tones and warm neutrals, and swatched out, the Viseart shimmer shades on the right side of your screen are a bit more saturated than the ABH ones, and when it comes to the mattes on the left side, I do think they actually line up pretty well. I would say, as somebody who loves neutrals, I'm more drawn to the more desaturated colors in the Anastasia palette. Just a little bit. I think the Viseart is just a bit more bold and colorful for my taste. Next, we have the new Tarte Maneater Nightfall palette. This one was also just released around the same time, and I thought I really saw some similarity holding them side by side, so I figured we should probably swatch them and see. And I was pretty surprised to see a bit of overlap between the two palettes. I think the biggest thing that's different, aside from Tarte not having the duochromes, I mean, none of the other palettes I'm going to show you have the duochromes, but it's the greens in the Tarte. They lean a bit more blue, while the ABH lean a little bit more gray. But honestly, this is a pretty similar fall palette with a ton of other color options to choose from, so this might be a good one as well. It has a really nice formula. On the drugstore side, we have the Milani Gilded Terra palette. This one at first glance looks a little bit brighter than Fall Romance, although it does have the greens, the rosy shades, and the warm neutrals, but it does lack some of the cooler tone shades and the duochromes again, and it's also just, I think, a little bit more colorful than the Anastasia palette, although again, it does have that very similar color story and vibe going on. Next, we have the Colourpop Lust for Dusk palette, and this one I love. It has that really earthy, grungy vibe. It's a very slept-on Colourpop palette, and I do think it has a similar undertone to the Fall Romance, but looking at the swatches, it does come off a little bit lighter, not quite as deep and smoky, so if you prefer something that has these tones for fall but leans a little bit lighter, I think you might really enjoy this one. Next up, we have the Sigma Enchanted palette. This is another palette that has a very, very similar color story with the greens and the rosy tones. And this one also has that mix of both warm and cool tone neutrals. And the Enchanted palette also goes very deep and dark, similar to Fall Romance. But looking at the swatches, I think the mattes are a little bit more similar than the shimmer shades are. And to be honest, I'm not really a huge fan of the Enchanted palette. The shimmers are almost all topper shades, and the mattes looked a bit muddy on my eyes. They were kind of hard to blend. So between the two, I definitely prefer the formula of the Anastasia palette. Then we have the Lorac Fairy Tale Forest palette. This one honestly does not get enough love. I felt like it blew up when it first came out, and we really don't hear about it much anymore, but it's one of my absolute favorite fall palettes. It was actually released in the fall, and it does have a very similar color story. We have some cool tones, some warm tones. You have the green shades, the rosy shades. It doesn't have the bright pops of color that the ABH has. It's a little bit more subtle and muted, but seeing it swatched out, there are actually a lot of similarities here, and I think if you want something that's a little bit lighter and not as smoky and deep, but you're still looking for a similar color story, this palette would be perfect. It has a really great soft blendable formula, definitely worth checking out. Okay, so let's go ahead and just get into some quick final thoughts. This was not what I was expecting at all. I was expecting not to like it. Obviously, I bought it because I wanted to do a review on my channel. And I admit I sometimes do buy palettes that I don't see myself wearing, just if I feel like enough people want to see a review on it. So this was just one of those things that I bought like for the job. But I am pleasantly surprised at how much I'm enjoying this palette. Not only are the shades more wearable on my skin tone than I was expecting them to be, other than that one shade Moonlight, the one that's a topper right here, that one was a little bit tricky to work with. I did have to wet it just to get it to show up. But other than that, everything blended so nicely. I was really worried, honestly, about these really dark mattes down here because I always have the worst luck getting mattes to blend out evenly and to not be patchy when they're this deep and dark. But they really went on as smooth as silk. I honestly couldn't be happier with the application and how all of the shades performed on my eyes. Keep in mind, I did prep my eyes again with the MAC paint pot, and I also dusted a translucent powder on top so that it didn't have any kind of tackiness to it and the shades would blend easily. So I highly recommend doing that no matter what palette you're using, but it especially was very helpful with this palette. And aside from the formula, the other thing that I love best about this palette is just that it's versatile. One of my pet peeves is when I buy a palette and I feel like I just keep getting the same looks over and over again. That's what happened with the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. Don't get me wrong, I love the color story of that one. I think it's beautiful, but I felt like a lot of the shimmer shades looked the same, and as a result, it ended up looking the same on my eyes, no matter which colors I chose. With this one, I love that I can do an all brown neutral look, or I could even warm it up with that fireside shade. I did that purpley magenta look, and then I also did this green look. So there's just a lot you can do with this one. And on top of that, it just has those really beautiful, warm, cozy fall vibes. You have some cool tones, you have some warm tones. It's just a really nice mix of colors. So honestly, I am shocked and pleasantly so. I pretty much did a 180 on this palette. I went into this review thinking that I was really not going to find looks that suited my skin tone. I wasn't expecting to love it nearly as much as I do, so I actually give this one a thumbs up, even for lighter skin tones, as long as you don't mind using the leather shade in your crease for pretty much every look, but I think it goes with every look, so it's not really an issue. So anyway, guys, I would love to hear your thoughts on this palette. Did you end up buying it? Have you tried it yet? What are you thinking? I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoy honest and unsponsored makeup reviews, I'll go ahead and just put a playlist of some of my recent reviews in case you want to check those out next if you have some extra time. And I just want to thank all of you so much again for watching. I hope you'll consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you all in my next video. Take care, guys. Bye.